Welcome to the Advanced Sports Analytics Show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. Blenderhead, a.k.a. Blender HD, a.k.a. hopefully on top of you on the GPP leaderboards this Sunday. I came close to this past week. Joined by the man behind the model. It's Stewart Gibson at Advanced Sports Analytics, and making a rare appearance. He comes back after two really good weeks, 7+ figures on the spreadsheet there. It's Brandon Adams. I have to needle you, Brandon, a little bit, because when you come in like third and fourth in the millie with the same lineup, I go, what happened with the dupes there?
Well, Stewart knows the reasoning behind that, because what I do is I do all my lineups by hand, and I do all my lineups by hand basically close to lock. So I've just found that I have poor results with optimizers for whatever reason, and I don't use them if it's important. And I just do a lot of clicking. I like sit at my computer and build stuff by hand. And what I will do is I will be very dynamic about my lineups, and I will make sacrifices in light of time constraints. So I'll sometimes make 50 lineups by hand for the Millionaire Maker, and I'll enter each lineup 3 times. And then I will look at the lineups around 3:30 or 4 o'clock and decide which ones I think are live. I make trade-offs in light of time constraints. So if you were truly optimal about it, then you would make adjustments based on cash probabilities and all of that. I just typically look at them. If they're live for the win, I'll make adjustments. And in that case, like logically, the lineup was not live for the win, so I didn't make any adjustments. And then it wouldn't have mattered if I made any adjustments because I had the stone nuts in the afternoon. But I would still maintain that it was good decision making in that case, because the lineup was dead for the win after the 1 p.m. slate. It just so happened that it hit so perfectly in the afternoon where I had New England defense at whatever single digit ownership, and they have a historic performance. And then I have the nuts in another spot. So it looks funny when you have two at the same time, but it was a case where, like, to my way of thinking based on my process, I'm not supposed to make an adjustment for the afternoon slate.
Okay. But I mean, it's very similar to me sometimes. You know, I'll enter 50 lineups. I'll enter 100. I'll enter the contest 100 times. And then from time constraints, it's like, damn, it's 5 minutes to go. And I really only have 80 lineups that I like to use. So I can't withdraw. The contest is full. So just, duplicate 20 of them. And then in the late games, you could always late swap and say, if I'm, like you said, if you're live for the win and you have like 3 lineups that are the same, you'll switch one out. You'll switch, instead of this running back, it's this running back. You'll make that 1v1 swap. So, you have 3 chances at the nuts. I mean, I just had to kneel you with because I make all unique lineups usually. And so when I'm on these showdown shows and I'm like, no, I pride myself on trying to make unique lineups. You don't want to, especially you don't want to have the same lineup twice in a showdown. So it feels like the audience would get on me if I didn't ask you about the dupes.
Yeah. Needless to say, showdown is a totally different animal, and you would never have that as a process. But with the full slates, there's so much late game flexibility that it can be okay to duplicate as time constraint and then make adjustments later.
Then Stewart, how was your week last week? I didn't play multi-entry. I just played like a lot of single entry lineups. So like I was close on some of them. I had like the nuts, then I Kamara and Tyreek Hill, and that didn't work out. But But Stewart, we're coming down to the end of the season, so I binked a GPP. Brandon, he made way more money than me. What's going on with you?
Yeah, I'm clearly the least successful. I was in a logistically tough environment to put together kind of multiple lineups last week. So threw in a single entry that, had some good pieces, but not enough to climb to the top of the leaderboard. I think had good process around going like with a Tannehill stack, but use AJ Brown and Jonnu, which didn't work out too well. Was thinking that, Michael Gallup would be decent leverage off Pollard. I kind of expected Pollard to be super popular, and I guess it turns out that he was not incredibly popular, but so.
Well, I mean, he should have been. It's just that NFL DFS tends to have a lot more casual money in there, and when you get news 90 minutes before lock, people don't change their lineups.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was an incredible play, or very very good play, and I just was thinking that many people would also think the same and gravitate towards him in a big way. I did also
out-leveled yourself. You gave the field too much credit.
Yeah. I mean, I was pretty certain. I liked the idea of doing like Ayuk versus Gallup was really where I had started, and then Pollard kind of opened up Ayuk Pollard. But I was just thinking, well, okay, I feel like so many people are going to be playing Ayuk. So many people are going to see Ayuk Pollard. So if I go like Ayuk Gallup,
I did kind of the same thing, but I did the opposite way. I went Bourne Pollard.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Use the leverage on the other side. So there you go. But we have a week 16 slate coming up right now. 10 games because we have 3 on Saturday, and we're not talking about those games. We're talking about the main slate on RotoGrinders. There will be that 3-game slate content up. I believe Friday. We have some premium stuff. I'll be doing a show before lock with Eric Beimfor. And as always, if you want to get any of our premium content at RotoGrinders, Lineup HQ, all the projections, you can now pay per sport. So if you only want to play NBA, like it's starting up now, you just have to pay for NBA. But if you want all the sports, it's all in one combo package. And you get $10 off your first month by clicking on the link in the description of the podcast or the YouTube, right? Click that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, right? Do stuff like that on YouTube. But check that out. So we have a slate that I like. This slate. To me, this is a blender slate, right? People call it that because we have a lot of low totals. And when there are a lot of low totals and not many high totals, I think vomit stacks. And this year, vomit stacks have not been the in thing, hasn't been the trend, right? There's so many high totals. You're never thinking about, taking a shot on some of these lower total games. But on this slate, we only have one game that has over a 50 total. And it's most probably going to be one of the popular games on the slate. It's the Kansas City Chiefs at home against the Falcons. It's a 54 total. The Chiefs are favored by 10.5 currently. The Chiefs have a 32.25 implied total. The Falcons have a 21.75 implied total. We talk about the Chiefs all the time. Mahomes, Kelsey, Hill. Obviously, they have some secondary pieces. Le'Veon Bell probably starts at running back. Stewart, I'm going to assume. I mean, they have a team total that's almost 4 points higher than the next team. I would have to bet my house that they're number one in the model.
Yeah, they are. It's an interesting week, and I'm kind of going back and forth on how I see this Kansas City side. But yeah, I mean, they are the most probable to score the most points and by, pretty wide margin. We have them at 19 plus % chance of scoring the most points. In second, Cleveland all the way down at, 11 plus %. So pretty big margin. And I mean, the price is obviously way up on, all these Kansas City guys across the board. And, I think in previous weeks we have not been super high on Kansas City because they've had price tags that are still lower than they are now, but like their total and kind of total relative to the other totals on the slate have been somewhat underwhelming. I mean, we have one of these weeks where Kansas City is back to the top and just in a pretty big way. I don't know. I'm interested to see kind of how y'all's ownership projects Mahomes. Like if he's going to be the most popular quarterback or one of the top 2 quarterbacks, seems like a decent spot to stay away from on account of just price sensitivity. But, it is a slate where, with no Rodgers, no Adams, no Tannehill, like there does seem to be somewhat of a shortage of kind of elite top flight quarterbacks. Russ is in there, but with a pretty, low total, such that just seems like Mahomes' route to being the top scoring quarterback on the slate is pretty clear. And, even though there is kind of a price surge on him and his pieces, I do wonder, just given the amount of separation we can project between, he and kind of the next best quarterback, and just also the Chiefs team as a whole. I wonder, if it might be warranted to spend up if the field is going to kind of be away from him.
Brandon, how are you going to handle this? Because my natural proclivity. I know we're recording on Christmas Eve, but I'm Jewish, so that's why it doesn't matter to me. I'm fine, right? There's no movie. The movie theaters aren't open though. Like typically my family, we go to the movies. We're the only ones in there, right? And then go get some Chinese food, like every good Jewish, non-kosher food. You get that. So from a price perspective, not to tie in, my Jewishness to the price, Tyreek Hill is 9,000 and Kelsey is 8,500. Ridley on the other side is 8,500. Is there enough value versus the ownership? Like how do you would you be stacking this game? Is there enough ceiling combined at these prices that it's worth to, how do you stack it? I mean, I'm prosing it to you because you tend, Brandon, to they're high total games. They're the most likely to shoot out. I want those games. Now, I could understand using pieces like having Tyreek Hill as a one-off, Kelsey as a one-off, Ridley as a one, do stuff like that. But pairing Mahomes with even if you're not pairing them with Kelsey and Hill together and you're taking a Watkins or a DeMarcus Robinson or something like that, at what point do you think that the prices are too high?
Yeah, I would not want to pay those prices this week. I think we're at the stage of the DFS season where things become much more complicated, and you really have to think about your lineups in terms of what type of contest am I entering. If you're doing smaller contests with higher buy-ins, you need more certainty of production. When you're doing stuff like the Millionaire Maker, of course, you can do the vomit stacks and take your chances. But a key thing for me is if I'm entering, say, a $300 contest, like a high dollar contest with medium size, medium 5,000 entrants or whatever, it's important for me to have certainty that weather is good and incentives are good. Okay. At this stage in the season, you have new complexities that come in. Do the teams want to play their guys? And is everyone full go the whole game for sure? And then weather starts getting complicated this time of year. So you really have to check off those boxes. And I'm quite conservative in those regards. If I'm playing a $300 tournament, I'm going to tend not to use guys if I think there are question marks. And
so does this Chiefs team, Brandon, do you think this Chiefs team doesn't need to win?
Because the Steelers have sort of faded away a bit. They, to me, I don't know why push the guys. Certainly we saw Lamar come out for his third backup or whatever for the last 6 minutes last week, or I expect because the production is so concentrated on Tyreek, Kelsey, and Mahomes. And look, the Chiefs almost got really unlucky with their running back situation because they played the guys late. I expect that if they are afforded the opportunity to rest their guys, they will rest their guys. That caps
and
the
you have to factor
to pay the prices. Right.
That's what I was going to say. You have to factor that risk in because at their prices, the Chiefs almost need to put up 42 points. They need to act like they do need to win, because a simple 22-point game from Tyreek Hill at 9,000 ain't going to cut it.
Yeah. Like in the big tournament last week, I played mostly Kyler, like extremely aggressive Kyler. And it was in part because that was the most trusted spot incentive wise. And I think now I'm going to sort of have to sort of think through everything in light of last week's changes, week 16. But I would say you kind of need to go through and say there are some teams that will take a break if they can. And the Chiefs seem like for sure number one in that regard.
And the Falcons play like they've taken a break.
Right? Yeah, Falcons, you have all sorts of obscure things going on. For some reason, Ryan's production has historically been very good in December. Not that is super relevant, but I have noticed a pattern over time where I'm shocked by like Atlanta totals late in the season, and I'm shocked by Vegas totals, and Vegas turns out to be right. I don't know. Obviously, people got burned on Tampa Bay defense last week. Obviously, Ryan put up a good performance. Ridley was massive. I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta had a good performance, but of course, they're a far worse team, and the most likely scenario is that KC gets out ahead and then puts on the brakes a little bit.
But obviously, this will be a popular game because it has such a higher total than anything else. But personally, from a price perspective, I think there were a lot better games on the slate as far as stackability is concerned. I could see one of the players of the Chiefs like being in the optimal lineup, like especially like in the tight, like to me, Kelsey in the tight end spot. Like Kelsey is like the only tight end on this slate that could put up a score that like you will need. Like if you don't have Kelsey's 28 points, the next highest scoring tight end could have 12. So like Brandon, do you agree with that? That you would be more likely, even if you're staying away from this game, that if you were to take a piece, it would be someone like Kelsey rather than like Mahomes and Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I agree with that. I thought that like last week in the big contest, I played mostly Andrews instead of Kelsey because I thought that the narrative of Kelsey like crushing everyone at the tight end position had gotten a little overblown. It depends a lot on contest size. Like if I think it's really like the mid-size contest types and the small mid-size contest types where it's kind of most important to win at tight end. So you're most inclined to pay premium. The very large contests, I think it's less of an issue. Like you can go, there's many different builds that can work. And for like a cash game style or very small field, I think there are many different builds that can work. But yeah, I would tend to be way underweight this game. I think far more interesting games are like Rams and Seahawks. They both have strong playoff incentives, and the only reason that the totals are not spectacular and the projections are not spectacular is because there are concerns about efficiency, but it's just the right kind of environment where a lot of plays are going to be run. Both teams have strong incentives. There's a good chance the game stays close. And all you need is like a good golf game where he has better than expected efficiency and you get great results.
Right, so let's talk about that game. I mean, because outside of the Falcons-Chiefs game, I know normally on this show, we go from top total to the top totals, but I mean, essentially it's one game has the highest total, and then we have this bucket of like everything else. So I find it interesting because to me, the Rams Seahawks game was not on my radar particularly, but I completely admit the fact that I'm more of a slave to projections than anything else. I could see if the Rams are good and the Seahawks are good. These are good teams. They've been playing poorly recently, but yes, if both their offenses are on, like this game could be 50 plus. So Stewart, because of the low implied totals, because we have the Seahawks at 24.5 and the Rams at 23. I have to assume that it's not like they probably don't show up that high, but they probably don't show up that low.
Yeah, I mean, Seahawks are towards the middle. We have them at a 4% chance of scoring the most points. Rams, 3.4%, kind of middle to low. Yeah, I mean, there's just this kind of bucket of teams between 2% likelihood and 7% likelihood that have they're not totally out of the mix. They're not in like Jaguars, Giants, Jets territory, but they're not you're not feeling super comfortable that they score the most points, but on a slate where I guess there's not too many teams that have like super high probabilities, could be worth a shot. I mean, for me, it just feels like these aren't really that cheap of stacks to acquire. It feels like a bit much to pay for teams with relatively low totals. To me, like I see games with higher totals with offensive pieces that can move just as well as these Seattle or Los Angeles guys, and are more efficiently priced. Some of them are in potentially like blowout risk spots, like Baltimore, Cleveland, some risk, and definitely to Brandon's point about incentivization. When you talk about like the Giants, Jaguars, Jets, Bengals of the world, it's pretty low competitive kind of incentive to play. So I don't know, that game, as you mentioned, was not on my radar either, mostly on kind of price sensitivity.
But I mean, that's exactly what my thought process was. So Brandon, you kind of, for the Rams side, you kind of have like a yin yang with your style of play. Darrell Henderson with Cam Akers may end up gaining some steam ownership wise, but he's only 4,500. And I know you like playing cheap running backs, especially in large field GPPs. But the leverage off of that would be playing a Goff plus Woods plus Higbee or Everett. I mean, obviously Kupp's there also, and especially coming off a game where they lost to the Jets. That probably, when people look at the game log and that's what they think of the Rams. Are you more likely to stack the passing game for the Rams or take the cheap running back?
Oh, passing game. Yeah, because the distributions of especially Woods are very, very nice for tournaments. Woods has these extreme games where he puts up tournament winning performances. So definitely the passing game. And for the purposes of this discussion, I'm talking about big field tournaments, Millionaire Maker. I think you can play the slate on a more straightforward basis if you're playing like 1,000 people or something like that. But I'm talking about playing 100,000 people or whatever. You want to get different, as you say, and it's unlikely that this slate gets away from you because it is a low total type slate. So you can take some chances, and of the chances I'm going to take, like Rams doesn't seem so extreme to me. I think that's like a fairly straightforward one to gamble on.
Right, but I see what Stewart's point was, that we have teams that have higher implied totals that have cheaper stack prices, cheaper pieces. So like one of the games that I'm looking at is the Broncos Chargers game. It's a 48.5 total. It's come down. It's Chargers are favored by 3.5. Chargers have a 26 implied total. Broncos have a 22 implied total. Now, Stewart, I'm going to ask you, about the Chargers being high on that list. I'm assuming the Broncos aren't, but would I be nuts to say that the Broncos are my favorite vomit stack of the slate?
Yeah, I mean, so no, you're correct. We got Los Angeles as sixth at a 6.4% chance. Broncos down at 3%, which I think is usually higher than they typically are. Maybe that's a short slate. But I mean, the thing with the Broncos is like you can get like lock Fant plus wide receiver for, really the same price of like, Minshew and company or
You can
Darnold.
get them at the same price as Tyreek Hill by himself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so they're like, it's one of these teams. And, I think this is how like the Broncos had that one good week against Atlanta where it's kind of similar setup, not like an exceptional total, but their price point relative to their total and just kind of where they fit in relative to kind of the other teams in the slate. I think it was a pretty good bargain. I mean, the Broncos we have at similar probability of scoring the most points to like Los Angeles, Atlanta, Pittsburgh. These are teams that are priced up. Washington even to an extent, like McLaurin, Thomas, Haskins even like. I mean, Haskins is cheap, but there are cheaper quarterbacks. So yeah, I mean, I think that price sensitivity wise, like they're in a decent spot. And it's very clear, I guess, with the Los Angeles side. Well, actually, no. I mean, so would you think Allen or Eckler?
Oh, Eckler is going to be. I like the Broncos stack because it could allow me to play a chalky Austin Eckler in a lineup where I mitigate the ownership by playing lock +2 in it. And I don't mind the double stacks this week when there are lower totals. So I'm more likely to stack with the tight end. I don't want to get the opportunity cost at wide receiver for ceilings and large field GPPs are just too high. That, do I think Judy and Patrick could, I guess they could both put up 20, but that's not going to be good enough for a milli maker, a slant type contest. So I'm like, it's going to be lock plus wide receiver plus Fant.
Yeah.
And then run it back with Eckler. I mean, you could still play Al. You could play Allen in the lineup. You could play Hunter Henry if you don't play Fant in the lineup with a single stack. I mean, there are many ways to go in this game, but the cheapness of the Broncos stack means that I could play the stack. I could play Eckler running back even at 20+% owned or whatever he'll be. And then I could just jam in. If I want to play DK Metcalf as a one-off, like I'm able to. If I could play Tyreek Hill as a one, I could play any of the high-priced wide receivers or running backs that could put up 30, 40 points maybe in a game like that. Like it gives me that's my vomit stack. I mean, I don't hide it. That's why I play vomit stacks. But I typically play them on slates where, we don't have 6 games that are 50+ totals. I mean, this may be a low-scoring slate, so vomit stacks could win on low-scoring weeks. And I think it's going to be a low-scoring week. So, Brandon, feel free to knock down and my vomit stack strategy like you normally do.
No, I'm not going to knock it down. The Denver receivers are beautiful GPP plays. I love Judy and Hamler especially. They're speedy and they can break off 18 DraftKings points in one play. They have great characteristics for tournaments. I love those guys. I think for Chargers, you really want all the pieces to be healthy. I haven't checked on Mike Williams. He's been banged up. I expect he'll be fine. Keenan Allen has a hamstring. I think he'll be fine, but you want all the pieces to be healthy for LAC. And yeah, then the game has great characteristics and with a lot of value this week and low totals, it will be a little bit unusual for me in that I will kind of want to pay up for running back, even in the Millionaire Maker. I think Eckler is just a great guy to have. You want to have high exposure to him. It's really hard for these lesser priced guys to beat even his median game. So because he's a pass catcher and he figures to catch a lot of passes this week, he's the type of high price running back that I will play and eat the chalk, have more than the field. Derrick Henry last week, that's the kind of guy you don't want to play. Absolutely. And I played 0%. But yeah, Eckler, go for it. Load up.
Okay, Stewart, is there a game on your radar? We were going through because we're doing one of each of our own. Brandon went with the Rams Seahawks. I went with the Chargers Broncos. I'm hoping you choose the one that my second favorite one.
Yeah.
We're usually on the same page, and it's not going to be the Browns. We'll talk about the Browns. It's Stewart. You're on the show. We have to talk about the Browns at some point. I hope it's not the Browns game.
Well, I mean, similar, games that just I think have similar, in that the opposition is pretty futile, and I'm somewhat interested in the favor side is Baltimore and Chicago.
Now you let me down. Those weren't the two I was looking at, but let's talk about that. Okay.
Yeah.
The problem with the Baltimore side to me is that, like, are they going to push Lamar, and then who do you pair him with, and then do you run back a Giants team with the 16.5 total? Like, this, to me, this seems like the type of game where either you're playing Lamar naked or with Andrews, like Lamar Andrews, or you're just hoping that the game duds.
Yeah, I mean, I would say just Lamar plus pass catcher, no bring back. I don't know. Chicago, I think, like Jacksonville, to me, has more bring back ability.
Really? The Jaguars? The Jaguars, they have like 17 guys that could get there. I'm just knocking everything down you say, Stewart. No, I like the Bears. The Bears project well. I think Allen Robinson projects well. Montgomery's going to be chalky.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Brandon, what are your thoughts on those two game environments in general? Are you on them like Stewart? Are you more looking like me? And I look at those games and I go, these are games that could underwhelm from a fantasy side of things.
I think Baltimore is a good play. I think people will feel a little bit burned on how they did sit their key guys for a lot of minutes on Sunday. But they need to win. They absolutely have to win. And I think that they're actually less likely to get in a situation where they rest up this week. And I think you can play it with no bring back in a mid-sized field and play it, just gamble on some bringbacks in a big field. But yeah, I like it. Like, last week was a very peculiar week because you had the expensive rushing quarterbacks in great spots, and it was hard not to reach for them. Like, I played 6 Kyler lineups of 9. It was going to be hard for a pocket QB to get there. Like, there were guys in good spots. Rivers was in a good spot. There were guys that almost got there, like Ryan. But this week, we got 2. We only got really 2. What, Hurts and Lamar are the only 2 rushing quarterbacks, really. Right. I mean, Trubisky, I guess, if you want to go back and claim that he's a rushing quarterback to some extent. Yeah. So I do kind of think there's a good case for paying for Lamar. And then there's kind of something quiet that happens in low scoring weeks that people don't fully appreciate, which is that it's, I think one of the considerations that tournament players don't give enough thought to is like how you allocate salary by position, right? And how it changes based on the situation for the week, right? When you have a low scoring week, you should be more inclined to pay up for quarterback And it's because like on a week like this, if we really break it down in terms of fantasy points per dollar, you'll find that by position, your best fantasy points per dollar happen at the quarterback position. So you want to tend to allocate more dollars to that position. And the problem, in other words, like your wide receiver has the most variance, but you'll get less bang for the buck in terms of fantasy point per salary dollar. With quarterback on a week like this, you will get most bang for the buck in terms of expected fantasy points per salary dollar. On a high total week, you still don't want to necessarily spend up at quarterback in a big field because it's the low variance position, and you're better off just trying to hit like the 5K or 6K guy, and then getting the high price running backs and high price wide receivers that have the very high ceilings.
Right. It's more the fact that running back, because it's low variance, that the higher scoring weeks with more higher total games, there most likely will be multiple quarterbacks that will put up a high enough score that's fine to have. But on a lower scoring week, if you could find the one quarterback that puts up, getting 18 points out of your quarterback on a week where, getting 28 points out of your quarterback on a week where 6 quarterbacks go for 28 plus points, like doesn't matter as much as getting the 28-point quarterback on a week where none of the other quarterbacks go for over 20. Like that's kind of at the quarterback position.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And there's also an element of just, you always want to capture equity where you can without capping your upside. And because on a week like this, your projected fantasy points per salary dollar tend to be highest at the quarterback position, you want to all else equal allocate a lot of money at the quarterback position. The only way you don't want to do that is if it caps upside. It will cap upside on a high total week, but it won't cap upside so much on a week like this. So this is the type of week where, for me, paying up for a guy like Lamar is a good thing to do.
How about paying up for Jalen Hurts? I think Hurts is going to be popular, and I think the Cowboys receivers are going to be popular. We have a game that's 49.5 total. The Eagles have a 25.75 implied total. The Cowboys have 23.75. It'll be in Dallas, indoors. Problem with the Eagles is like what you could pair. Goddard is the second best projected tight end point per dollar. So we may see a lot of Hurts plus Goddard plus Dallas wide receiver. Obviously, we have to see whether or not Gallup is going to play or not. But it could be Cooper. It could be Lamb. Zeke probably plays, but if he doesn't play, then you get Pollard there. Do you think that the Eagles-Cowboys game, depending on those scenarios, is a good environment, or is it going to be something that will be over-owned for its probability?
Yeah, for me, that would be one I would be pretty far underweight. Obviously, it's been smashed to oppose Dallas for the year. But I feel like Hurts is at a fairly rich price. His weaponry is just not good enough. Like, just by the eyeball test, mostly, I'm going here more on eyeball than data, but like he's a great rushing quarterback. And if he had the weaponry, you would happily pay $7K for him, but he doesn't. Like the team is just not good. Like Greg Ward, there's just not enough there. So for me, even against Dallas, like he doesn't have tournament winning weaponry to work with. So it would be a spot that I would tend to avoid.
Especially when he's going to be probably over-owned based on a 2-game sample size of, he put up 40 points last week.
Yeah, he looks great. I mean, like I said, if he had some great wide receivers to work with, fire it up. But I just don't see enough upside in his weaponry. I mean, he has the rushing floor. That's great. Maybe he gets in the end zone a couple of times. Like there's always that. But for me, to really target him, I would want that rushing upside plus some weaponry in the receivers.
So Stewart, do the Eagles? I mean, they have a 25.75 implied total. I mean, they probably come in your model around where the Chargers are or so.
Yeah, they're just behind the Chargers, seventh most likely, Dallas ninth most likely. So like it is one of these games where it's kind of competitive from both sides, and there are actually, few of those on the slate. I think it's tough. I mean, we talk about it with Tampa Bay, it seems like Tampa Bay, Indianapolis this week. And, I think Philadelphia and Dallas among their pass catchers, there's a bit of kind of pass catcher roulette there as well. It, seems like there's a good deal of uncertainty. Hurts, I think you're willing to do naked, but yeah, it seems like there's a bit of a pick'em that makes it somewhat challenging to kind of figure out what the clear route is for really either side of this game.
Okay, Stuart, can you guess what my favorite game on the? Can you? We're gonna go one more game, and it's the one that I'm picking out. It's my favorite. It's other than the Broncos. It's my favorite. It's my favorite overall game on the entire slate. Can you identify it? You'd look at it and go, "Wow."
Pitt?
No.
Houston, Cincinnati? I don't know.
There you go. Two teams that are awful and have nothing to play for other than it's week 16. They don't have defenses, right? Bengals barely have a quarterback. To me, I look at the prices of this game, and it's being played indoors in Houston. You get, week 17, probably half these guys don't even play. Doesn't even matter. But for the prices, I don't like this game. I consider this to be a very high variance game. This is either a game where the offense is inefficient or the defense is inefficient. So it's a type of game where this could be 14-10 or it could be 42-35 because they're just chucking the ball. Like just Ryan, the Bengals have nothing to play for. The Texans have nothing to play for. They just chuck the ball. I mean, the Bengals against the Steelers is much different than against the Texans defense. So I don't mind Ryan Figley plus T. Higgins. But I would more likely do it from the other side. Watson plus pass catcher plus T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd on the way back. And like, not many people are going to play this game because of like, why would you play Bengals Texans at 46 total? But on a week where the totals are low, Watson, I mean, we see Watson and the Texans have properties for ceilings. T. Higgins has a property in the Texans secondary, breaking one off for 120 yards. So, Brandon, I see you're smiling. Either you're smiling because you agree with me or you think I'm a fool.
I have to admit to some level of distraction there. It's funny. One lesson that I had when I was teaching is that you always think that other people can't see when you're doing something else, but they always can. Yes. So I have to admit to some level of distraction there.
I guess for me, what separates, this game from, like, for me, they're really, these four games just are very similar. Cleveland, Baltimore, Chicago, Houston, and then the other sides. I guess like Houston is a pretty flammable defense in a way that like Chicago and Baltimore are not.
Right. The competition. It's like I look at like Baltimore. Who do I play in that game? Like there aren't many choices. Browns, Jets. I mean, we've done this with the Jets before. Like to me, the Browns, it's like, oh, I play Chubb, I play Hunt, I play Land. I mean, like I don't see stacking the game. But in Houston, Cincinnati, like I feel like I could play 20 lineups of this game and have Chad Hansen, Kiki Cutie, Jordan Akins. I could have David Johnson if the other guys sit. And the Bengals, like I could have Higgins, Boyd. I could have so many. To me, Higgins and Boyd are much more talented wide receivers than Jamison Crowder and Brashad Perriman and guys like that in a game where I think the Browns don't necessarily. I mean, the Browns want to win, but it's just a matter of, do I think yes, I could play some Mayfield. I could play some Landry, but it just feels like the Bengals Texans game. It could be one of those. I mean, I'm used to this in soccer. Like in soccer, a lot of times, like when the two last place teams face each other in like the group stage of a tournament, like where it's the last round of the group stage, and no one can, like, the result doesn't matter. Like they're both eliminated. Typically, that affects the defense more than the offense. The defenders are less likely to care because give up as many goals as you want. It doesn't matter. So the game sometimes tends to play extremely free-flowing because of that. I don't know how much of an effect that is in the NFL. And in basketball, we see it all the time, right? Two teams that they don't get, like, typically it's
all-star game.
Right. It's like the all-star game, right? No one wants to play defense because you have to work at that. So to me, these are teams that, like, you have young enough players that are competing for starting jobs and contracts, and defenders that, like, who cares if we lose? I'm not going to chase this guy down. It's just like, okay, you got there, and they're bad defenses to begin with.
Right.
That's why I say it's high variance, because they're also bad offense. I mean, the offenses tend to be inefficient also. So this could be a 14-10 game, or it could be 42-35. But for large field GPPs, I'm more likely to embrace that type of variance than, look at a game like the Bears Jaguars and go, what happens in this game that it turns into a 70-point shootout? Like, I just don't see it for that game.
Got it. All right. Well, you want to maybe talk through, because I do think, Watson, obviously, there's a lot. That's kind of the one clear piece, at least to me. On the Houston side, it seems like you could go Cooks or Kuti, right? Or I guess maybe even David Johnson. You could add Hansen, you could add Akins. I mean, at least at first glance, I'd probably avoid going like Watson, Cooks, Kuti. Just feels like, Kuti and Cooks are both priced pretty efficiently, such that if one succeeds, the other's likely to fail, or if they both,
I don't want to take up two wide receiver spots if possible.
Okay.
Right. But I mean, I'm just saying there's a lot of pieces. This is the type of game that I don't have. This is not I'm playing in a small field 800-man single entry, that type of thing. This is the type of thing of, like, I'm going to dedicate 20 lineups to this game, and so I don't have to bother choosing between Boyd and Higgins. It's just like I'm going to have half Boyd and half Higgins. I'm going to have some Cook, some QT, some Hank. It's just like, I'll have Drew Sample, who knows, right? AJ Green, that corpse shows up out of nowhere, whatever, something like that. It just Bernard, even. I mean, pass catching running back out of the backfield.
He's really cheap this week. I guess he didn't get the Monday night bump. I mean, he's super cheap and I think works. I guess you just wouldn't play him opposite, say, like David Johnson if you were
right. But I'm expecting, we don't have initial ownership out yet, but I'm expecting the ownership on all these players are going to be low.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, it's not like this is the popular game. That's why I'm looking at the Broncos and this game as, like, these are kind of like my vomit stack type of things, and then target ceiling elsewhere. So I mean, on a 10-game slate that's low scoring, I mean, nothing is that outlandish. Brandon, you would admit that on a like, even if you said, oh, how about the Washington team, or how about like anyone on a low scoring slate, if they just go like 4 to 7 points over their median or whatever at their prices, like median score, like Washington puts up 29 instead of 22, like their stack could get there, right? Like the totals are low enough that if you get a 68th percentile outcome, a 70th percentile outcome from even the cheaper teams, that they could be in the winning lineup.
Yeah, for me, the way to play this game would be you can get aggressive on David Johnson, because I think that's a really good play. And then on the Cincinnati side, I would have I would have one receiver peppered. I would be maybe overexposed to the Cincinnati receivers, but I would just pepper in one guy, and it doesn't really matter which one. You have more than the rest of the field. You fill in one space with Boyd, you fill in one space with Higgins, you fill in one space with Green. And the reason I would take that approach is I would think that like stacking this game or having multiple pieces of this game would be something you would want to do just out of like 3 in 150 lineups or something. It's if you're thinking about how it's likely to go, you've got the Cincinnati side that's most likely to outperform, that's most likely to kind of go off. And in terms of tournament winning performances, it's like one of those guys going for a couple touchdown performance. For me, Watson is like, I would not play him under any circumstances. I think, okay.
Really? Really?
Here's why. If you think common sense incentives, you would say both teams are out of it. Deshaun Watson is a top 4 NFL quarterback. Let's not get Deshaun Watson hurt. That's just like A-level, just.
Yeah, but I think they'll do that way. I think what they'll do is week 16, he goes out, have some fun, and then week 17, he doesn't play. So, I mean.
What Vegas is saying is that incentive is likely to hold.
They have a 26.75 implied total. What are you talking about?
They have Houston?
Yes, 26.75 implied total.
I don't think so.
That's what I have on my screen. It's a 46 total, and the Texans are favored by 7.5.
I have it as the fewest projected plays on the weekend as a game, and I believe that's because Cincinnati's not projected to have a lot of plays because they don't stay on the field, and Houston is likely to run the ball more than they might otherwise, and just generally slow the game down. And
I'm just going by implied total. I mean, like regardless of the plays or whatever. I mean, I could take a look at that also, but obviously Stewart, you'd look at, just.
Yeah, you're right. I was looking at a bad total. I was looking at a 43 total, and it's a
46 total and they're a 7.5 point favorite. That's what I'm saying. 26.75 points implied is like higher than some other teams, and like obviously Vegas thinks they're going to put up almost 4 touchdowns. So why don't I get them?
Yeah, no, we have them 5th on our list.
Fifth? God, they're 5th. I've been being scolded to. They're 5th on your list.
I will say I haven't updated it since.
Oh, okay, you have to.
If there has been significant morning movement, that could be a hanging chat on that one. Hanging chat Hansen.
But yes, but I would agree with you, Brandon. According to the Blitz, it's the second lowest projected amount of plays currently in the Blitz.
And by the way, in terms of like fantasy sports analytics, this general topic of incentives is something that far better work needs to be done on, because like at ASA a few years ago, we tried our hand at it. And basically what we found is that incentives matter a bit less than you would generally think. Like most teams kind of play their guys, and the fact that the individual players have incentives to perform means that more than you would think, teams sort of disregard incentives and do their thing. But more work needs to be done in this regard, because at this time in the season, these are very, very popular things. And in terms of our biases, we just remember so clearly those times where we play a guy who might not have incentive to play and he's rested, and it screws us. Like it's the type of situation where our biases throw us very far off. And
that's why I want to take advantage of them. I want people to think that this is a game that both teams don't matter. They're just going to rest. But it's week 16, and the total is I look at the Vegas lines. It's the most efficient thing in all of sports. And I'm like, it's a 27-6 that you're telling me they're going to score almost 4 touchdowns. Why not play them?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking too simple-minded. I'm just like, why not?
Yeah. It seems reasonable. Like I said, I was looking at the wrong total there. So I do think, obviously it's a great spot for Watson if it turns out that he goes full bore. If I were coaching,
right? If you ever
I would run a lot of David Johnson and like not have Deshaun taking a lot of chances.
You know how many times fantasy players and analytics people are like, if rational coaching existed, this is that you'd never lose. But like, come on, we look at Anthony Lynn, look at Tomlin, look at the coaching. Pete Carroll still wants to run the ball a million times for no reason. So like we could think in our heads like, oh, there's no way that the Texans just push their franchise quarterback in a game that doesn't mean anything. And then he goes out and like, okay, yeah, I guess the coaches are stupid. We see that. Brandon, I almost rather assume they're stupid than assume they're smart at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you.
Lamar goes out. It's the fourth quarter, and they're up by 4 touchdowns, and he's still in. And you're wondering, like, why is this happening? It's like, well, because coaches are stupid.
Yeah. A lot of times the players want to play. They want to put up stats, and they're telling the coaches that they want to play. I do think it's a smash spot for David Johnson, though. I think he'll likely get going. And
I could play David Johnson across from T. Hick. I could play even if it's just a secondary correlation in the lineup, if you don't stack it.
Yeah, no, I think that's super, super viable, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Stewart, you got the Substack coming out this week, right? You got NBA stuff. People don't realize.
Yeah.
That you're doing NBA stuff. We talked about it before the show. NBA projections, you know me, I trumpet the RotoGrinders projections. So it almost feels like we're in competition a little. You have to up the game. Our projections team is really good, but you also have tools for NBA on ASA that would be useful that RG doesn't have.
Yeah, so we build traditional projections as well as, I would say, data aggregation and kind of visualization tools. Looking at player-specific metrics. So I think one tool I rely on a lot for NFL that we put out is our volume efficiency tool, tracking players' volume, opportunity volume, and just their efficiency per that unit of volume, usually a rush or target. Want to put out something similar for basketball. I think there's so much roster turnover this year with the NBA. It's going to be interesting to see what players maintain. Kind of, we have our priors on like what we think certain players usage levels are, rotation kind of allotment is, and it'll be, and then new players come in, certain players exit. It'll be interesting to kind of track how some of these moving pieces affect the roles of some of the players we have kind of preconceived notions about from last year. Yeah, I'm not sure yet exactly how we're going to incorporate the Substack for NBA. For football, it's just so perfect with the weekly slate. For basketball, I don't think it's something we can do on a daily basis. So we'll try to do some sort of weekly Substack NBA offering, as well as rolling out those tools, projections as well. So yeah, you can find us at advancedsportsanalytics.com or on Twitter. We should have, good information as we announce kind of the rollout of, the current stuff we have out now, as well as rolling out, some new tools early in the season. So.
And Brandon, anything else that you're up to? I know you're doing some stuff with high stakes poker.
Yeah, that was fun. Done a couple of Vegas trips this year. Faded COVID both times, so had some good trips out there. And yeah, it feels like it's going to be a big year for advanced sports analytics. We got a lot of plans. And
NBA, and we got sports. It almost feels like, well, I get to play DFS every day now. Like, because we typically, like by October, like you have baseball in September still, and you have NBA starting in October. So like you're playing NFL DFS like on top of the stuff that you'd be playing every day. And it kind of like this season for NFL, it kind of like, it's like, oh, it's Wednesday. Like, you mean I have to you mean I have to spend time with my family? Like, like, why isn't there anything on? Like, come on. So obviously, advancedsportsanalytics.com. You could check out all their tools there. Brandon Adams on Twitter, BAdams78. Stewart Gibson, Start Gibson. And I'm Jordan Cooper at Blender HD on Twitter. There's been another episode of the Advanced Sports Analytics Show on RotoGrinders.com.